The second essay in Studies in Pessimism is titled On the Vanity of Existence. Schopenhauer begins by talking about the nature of time and how it is that time shows us the futility, the vanity of all of our struggles. He speaks a little bit about the value of human life and how it is that in a world of constant flux and motion and becoming, there can be no final happiness for beings such as us. He talks a bit about why it is that will, this fundamental force in his metaphysics, is always going to be frustrated in this life. We're never going to find the actual satisfaction of our desire. It will simply be endless desire, again, in line with the title, in vain, the vanity of our existence. And towards the end of the essay, he speaks a bit about boredom, and his analysis of boredom, he claims, shows us, if we had any doubt, that our life has no intrinsic value. So watch for those things as we go. With that prologue, here is Schopenhauer on the vanity of existence. The vanity of existence. This vanity finds expression in the whole way in which things exist, in the infinite nature of time and space, as opposed to the finite nature of the individual in both, in the ever-passing present moment as the only mode of actual existence, in the interdependence and relativity of all things, in continual becoming without ever being, in constant wishing and never being satisfied, in the long battle which forms the history of life, where every effort is checked by difficulties and stopped until they are overcome. Time is that in which all things pass away. It is merely the form under which the will to live, the thing in itself and therefore imperishable, has revealed to it that its efforts are in vain. It is that agent by which at every moment all things in our hands become as nothing, and lose any real value they possess. That which has been exists no more. It exists as little as that which has never been. But of everything that exists, you must say, in the next moment, that it has been. Hence, something of great importance, now past, is inferior to something of little importance, now present, in that the latter is a reality and related to the former as something to nothing. A man finds himself, to his great astonishment, suddenly existing, after thousands and thousands of years of non-existence. He lives for a little while, and then again comes an equally long period when he must exist no more. The heart rebels against this and feels that it cannot be true. The crudest intellect cannot speculate on such a subject without having a presentiment that time is something ideal in its nature. This ideality of time and space is the key to every true system of metaphysics, because it provides for quite another order of things than is to be met with in the domain of nature. This is why Kant is so great. We'll pause there for a moment. Schopenhauer is connecting first off the vanity of existence with his deep metaphysics of the will, this idea that the fundamental life force that is the true reality of the universe is will, this struggle or desire that sort of wells up and takes shape in each of us as an individual in terms of our desires, and in animals in terms of their life, their striving to live. This desire is ultimately frustrated in that each of us dies. We don't achieve what we desire. And so understanding this seems to be the key moral lesson that Schopenhauer's philosophy is trying to teach us. So to try to explain a little bit of this without pausing for too long, Schopenhauer dwells on the fact that of things that exist, only the present things do in fact exist. Things which are past are just as non-existent as if they never were. And so the most important thing, a few minutes after it has ceases to exist, is less important than the most insignificant, mite of dust that does in fact exist. So to be is to be in the present, to be real, and things are constantly passing out of reality. Even consider our own lifetimes. We have the years that we have, preceded by and succeeded by vast lengths of time of non-existence. This is the thing that we sort of cry out against internally, that we are imprisoned in, thrown into time. We cannot escape from time. And I think that's part of what he means here by talking about the heart has, even the crudest intellect has a presentiment that we're dealing here with something ideal. And this is a difficult concept to explain in metaphysics for the beginner. He does praise Kant in this regard, right? The ideality of time and space, that these are ideal things, not realities beyond us. The best way I can try to explain this is to say first that time and space are elements of our own consciousness. So when I think about time and when I think about space, I'm talking not about some reality outside of me, which I discover. So, oh, there's time, there's space. I'm talking instead about structures of my consciousness that are part of every experience that I have of the world. My life, my consciousness is a temporal consciousness. It is a spatial consciousness. I encounter things. I bring these categories with me to all the objects of my experience. Maybe a better way to put it that stays away from the technical language is that time is just inescapable for us. We are not able to exist in any other way than in time and in this sort of constant, almost outrageous and lamentable passing from existence into non-existence as we go from being in the present to being in the past. Each of the things that we love and that we anticipate and that we enjoy only for that brief moment of reality that time allows us to have them. And he says at the end of this passage that the reason Kant is so great is because the recognition that time and space are ideal opens up to us a recognition that there is perhaps a world of things in themselves outside of space and time, not accessible to us through experience, where there may be a greater, better kind of reality, something beyond the natural. So that's where metaphysics should lead us according to this school of thought. Schopenhauer goes on. Of every event in our life, we can say only for one moment that it is, forever after that it was. Every evening we are poorer by a day. It might perhaps make us mad to see how rapidly our short span of time ebbs away. If it were not that in the furthest depths of our being we are secretly conscious of our share in the inexhaustible spring of eternity, so that we can always hope to find life in it again. Consideration of this kind, touched on above, might indeed lead us to embrace the belief that the greatest wisdom is to make the enjoyment of the present the supreme object of life, because that is the only reality, all else being merely the play of thought. On the other hand, such a course might just as well be called the greatest folly. For that which in the next moment exists no more, and vanishes utterly like a dream, can never be worth a serious effort. I think in one paragraph here, Schopenhauer has raised both the appeal of hedonism, enjoy the present moment because it's the only reality, and the vanity or futility of hedonism. What's going to pass away instantaneously is not worth a serious effort by a serious being. Again, he's pointing, I think, towards this other world that we should direct our attention to in some fashion. The whole foundation on which our existence rests is the present, the ever-fleeting present. It lies, then, in the very nature of our existence to take the form of constant motion, and to offer no possibility of our ever attaining the rest for which we are always striving. We are like a man running downhill who cannot keep on his legs unless he runs on, and will invariably fall if he stops. or again, like a pole balanced on the tip of a finger, or like a planet which would fall into the sun the moment it ceased to hurry forward on its way. Unrest is the mark of existence. In a world where all is unstable and naught can endure, but is swept onwards at once in the hurrying whirlpool of change, where a man, if he is to keep erect at all, must always be advancing and moving like an acrobat on a rope, in such a world, happiness is inconceivable. How can it dwell where, as Plato says, continual becoming and never being is the sole form of existence? In the first place, a man never is happy, but spends his whole life in striving after something which he thinks will make him so. He seldom attains his goal, and when he does, it is only to be disappointed. He is mostly shipwrecked in the end, and comes into harbor with masts and rigging gone. And then it is all one whether he has been happy or miserable, for his life was never anything more than a present moment always vanishing, and now it is over. Some powerful writing, I think, in this paragraph, connecting with Plato, the idea that this world is the world of becoming and there is a higher world of being. This world, however, has no stability and constant flux. I like the image of a man running downhill, only able to keep his balance by constantly moving forward. And our life, one not of happiness, but of constant striving. We're constantly reaching towards the next thing that we think will make us happy. But when we come to our death, another great image here, a ship coming into harbor with its masts broken and its rigging gone. It's only just barely survived the storm. At that point, does it matter much what the present moments that are now gone in the past and don't exist, what they were spent on? And this, again, the essay is about the vanity of existence. Going on. At the same time, it is a wonderful thing that in the world of human beings, as in that of animals in general, this manifold, restless motion is produced and kept up by the agency of two simple impulses, hunger and the sexual instinct, aided a little perhaps by the influence of boredom, but nothing else. And that, in the theater of life, these suffice to form the primum mobile of how complicated the machinery, setting in motion how strange and varied a scene. On looking a little closer, we find that inorganic matter presents a constant conflict between chemical forces, which eventually works dissolution, and on the other hand, that organic life is impossible without continual change of matter, and cannot exist if it does not receive perpetual help from without. This is the realm of finality, and its opposite would be an infinite existence, exposed to no attack from without, and needing nothing to support it. Greek. Here he quotes some Greek. I'm not going to try to pronounce it. The realm of eternal peace. More Greek. Some timeless, changeless state, one and undiversified, the negative knowledge of which forms the dominant note of the Platonic philosophy. It is to some such state as this that the denial of the will to live opens up the way. Pause to comment again for just a moment that the life of humans and animals, our constant striving, leading eventually to our death, unsatisfied as ever, is produced simply by two things, our desire for food and our desire for sex. Aided a little bit perhaps by boredom, that occasionally boredom presses upon us. He'll say more about boredom in the pages ahead. And that in this world, we are looking at, he says, finality. I'm going to take that here to mean that our things are coming to an end, because the opposite of this would be to live an infinite existence. We might think, we may or may not think that desirable, but we ought to consider how completely opposite to our current way of living an infinite existence would be. This is what he's pointing to then as part of this Platonic realm of the forms, this timeless, changeless state, the negative knowledge of which, knowing that we are not in it and knowing what it is not, like it's not changeable, it's not in time, is what Platonic philosophy is about. If we deny our will to live, if we practice this kind of self-denial and this moving towards giving up on desire, we are perhaps opening up, becoming open to such a future state. So that this being something like the nirvana, the non-existence that Schopenhauer would offer to us as the objective reality that is the other world beyond the world of change. Schopenhauer continues, "The scenes of our life are like pictures done in rough mosaic. Looked at close, they produce no effect. There is nothing beautiful to be found in them unless you stand some distance off. So, to gain anything we have longed for is only to discover how vain and empty it is. And even though we are always living in expectation of better things, at the same time we often repent and long to have the past back again. We look upon the present as something to be put up with while it lasts, and serving only as the way towards our goal. Hence, most people, if they glance back when they have come to the end of life, will find that all along they had been living ad interim. They will be surprised to find that the very thing they disregarded and let slip by unenjoyed was just the life in the expectation of which they passed all their time. Of how many a man may it not be said that hope made a fool of him until he danced into the arms of death?" There's something rather tragic, I think, rather sad about some of these musings, that as a young man, I'm always thinking of myself moving towards the next thing, the next achievement, the next degree, the next job, the next conquest, as though it would make me happy. But of course, at the end of life, I look back, I may think, I wish I had those moments back again to spend differently, that they don't exist now. I mean, that would be the case regardless of how I had invested them. Okay, another great passage from previously in the essay. Every day we are poorer by one day. Okay, and the recognition that, yeah, my whole life has passed. I've been living constantly in the expectation that I'm going to be getting somewhere, and I find, because all desire is ultimately unfulfilled and futile, I find that I have been a fool. Right? Hope has made a fool of me until I dance into the arms of death. I'm always expecting something better and something better, and then not only do I not get it, I arrive at the end and I'm never going to get it. So, going on now. Then again, how insatiable a creature is man! Every satisfaction he attains lays the seeds of some new desire, so that there is no end to the wishes of each individual will. And why is this? The real reason is simply that, taken in itself, will, capital W, is the lord of all worlds. Everything belongs to it, and therefore no one single thing can ever give it satisfaction, but only the whole, which is endless. For all that, it must rouse our sympathy to think how very little the will, this lord of the world, really gets when it takes the form of an individual, usually only just enough to keep the body together. This is why man is so very miserable. I'll pause again for a comment here, although it's just one paragraph. We are insatiable, we have constant desires. Why? Because will, this fundamental life force of struggle, of striving that takes shape in each individual, is, by its very nature, can never be satisfied by any single thing or any collection of things in the world. It wants the whole of the world. It is, in its very nature, infinite in its desire for its object. And I can't have the whole world, the whole of things, existing as I do in time and having only the tiny sliver of the present in which to experience whatever my desire or object of my desire turns out to be. So, as a being who is will taken shape in a single individual with my own sort of individual struggles for my own individual pleasures, my own hungers and sexual drives, I'm I'm doomed never to achieve the satisfaction that will by its very nature is oriented towards the possession of the whole. So what do I have? Well, I have just enough will and struggle to keep me alive, to keep my body together and going. I would observe this as well in the lower animals, right? They have just enough will and sort of life force to keep them going, perpetuating their species, eating enough to keep going, scamper off to escape from predators, etc. That's what life is. Schopenhauer goes on. Life presents itself chiefly as a task. The task, I mean, of subsisting at all, gagner sa vie. If this is accomplished, life is a burden, and then there comes the second task of doing something with that which has been won, of warding off boredom, which, like a bird of prey, hovers over us, ready to fall wherever it sees a life secure from need. The first task is to win something, the second, to banish the feeling that it has been won. Otherwise, it is a burden. Human life must be some kind of mistake. The truth of this will be sufficiently obvious if we only remember that man is a compound of needs and necessities hard to satisfy, and that even when they are satisfied, all he obtains is a state of painlessness, where nothing remains to him but abandonment to boredom. This is direct proof that existence has no real value in itself. For what is boredom but the feeling of the emptiness of life? If life, the craving for which is the very essence of our being, were possessed of any positive intrinsic value, there would be no such thing as boredom at all. Mere existence would satisfy us in itself, and we should want for nothing. But as it is, we take no delight in existence except when we are struggling for something. And then distance and difficulties to be overcome make our goal look as though it would satisfy us, an illusion which vanishes when we reach it. Or else, when we are occupied with some purely intellectual interest, when in reality we have stepped forth from life to look upon it from the outside, much after the manner of spectators at a play. And even sensual pleasure itself means nothing but a struggle and aspiration, ceasing the moment its aim is attained. Whenever we are not occupied in one of these ways, but cast upon existence itself, its vain and worthless nature is brought home to us. And this is what we mean by boredom. The hankering after what is strange and uncommon, an innate and ineradicable tendency of human nature, shows how glad we are of any interruption of that natural course of affairs which is so very tedious. I'll pause for one more comment here. Human life is a mistake. Life is a task. First, life is a task, right? We want to remain alive, and then now, having remained alive, I have got all these present moments to spend one at a time in succession to ward off boredom. This is this great turn of phrase. Having won my life by remaining alive, now I have to banish the feeling from my mind that it, in fact, is something that has been won. I have to occupy it in a way that causes me to forget that I have it. To forget it itself, to be aware of my existence as existence, to be aware of the present moment as the present. That's what boredom is. It's this kind of subjective experience of the utter emptiness of my being alive at all, which of course was the thing that like will is driving me to attain and maintain at all cost. The more prosperous, the more secure I am, the better I should feel, the more I should enjoy life. And yet he says in this passage, life is the one thing that I can't enjoy. I fill my life with my desire, my will, the things or the distant object, which because it's distant looks like it must be glorious to have, when I arrive at it like a mirage or like something that would be distorted by distance, by fog and heat waves, I discover it really wasn't all that. It's certainly not something that would have been worthwhile for me to spend time trying to acquire. And yet, the next object in the distance is the thing that I struggle and strive towards. If I stop doing this, I run the risk of achieving boredom. How do I escape from this cycle of desire and boredom? The hint here is in the intellectual pursuit, in becoming, we might say, a Schopenhauerian philosopher, and in recognizing this, the vanity of existence, the futility, and of stepping outside of it, outside of the realm of struggle. Quite a challenging teaching here to place alongside Pascal about the nature of boredom. Schopenhauer seems to be going farther than Pascal to say that the fact that we experience boredom indicates that life, having life itself, existing, is not an intrinsic good, because when we're left alone doing just that, we find it intolerable. We don't enjoy it. We become bored. So, finishing the essay now, Schopenhauer concludes that this most perfect manifestation of the will to live, the human organism, with the cunning and complex working of its machinery, must fall to dust and yield up itself and all its strivings to extinction. This is the naive way in which nature, who is always so true and sincere in what she says, proclaims the whole struggle of this will as, in its very essence, barren and unprofitable. Were it of any value in itself, anything unconditioned and absolute, it would not thus end in mere nothing. If we turn from contemplating the world as a whole, and in particular the generations of men as they live their little hour of mock existence, and then are swept away in rapid succession, if we turn from this and look at life in its small details, as presented, say, in a comedy, how ridiculous it all seems. It is like a drop of water as seen through a microscope, a single drop teeming with infusoria, or a speck of cheese full of mites invisible to the naked eye. How we laugh as they bustle about so eagerly and struggle with one another in so tiny a space. And whether here or in the little span of human life, this terrible activity produces a comic effect. It is only in the microscope that our life looks so big. It is an indivisible point drawn out and magnified by the powerful lenses of time and space. That is the conclusion of the essay. And I think here in that final passage, definitely an echo of something said by Pascal about the world, the universe as a circle with its center everywhere and its perimeter nowhere. I've forgotten the precise quote, but I should look that up. There is no more perfect manifestation of the will to live than this human being, and nature, by bringing human beings, even the sort of most magnificent and complex machinery for living and expressing the will to live, even they die without satisfying their desire, and they die lives of futility and nothingness. And this is sort of nature's lesson that, guess what? Will itself is futile and unprofitable. Don't do it. The wise person will withhold from the struggle, will pull back. And this final image of looking at small microorganisms in a drop of water under the microscope. We sort of chuckle. Oh, look at how they struggle and bump against each other. Look at how each one of them tries to perhaps outdo the others or maintain itself at the expense of the others. Look at them struggling to live. This is our life, which only looks so big because we see it under the microscope of time, because we experience each element of our life through that sort of narrow lens of the present moment, which magnifies it to out of all proportion to its true value. So what is ultimately meaningless seems for us in every present moment of our lives in succession to be the most important thing of all. The escape from this is going to be, I think, for Schopenhauer, a certain kind of intellectual recognition, and then a certain kind of practice of inner discipline and peace and withdrawal and calming of will in oneself so as to hope to escape from the futility and the vanity of existence. So that's my commentary on this essay. We'll take a look at the next essay on suicide in another video. Thanks for watching today. Goodbye.